Hey, solos. So apparently January 20th is called Blue Monday in that it's the day where most people realize that they have gotten rid of all of their New Year's resolutions and it's gray and they're just feeling kind of sad. There were other things happening in the United States that might have made you feel sad, and therefore you might be feeling kind of the January blues this week. So hopefully this episode will cheer you up and can make you think about some maybe exciting solo travels for this year, or maybe a trip in the future that will really get you motivated to kind of think more broadly about your Disney solo vacations. Hi everyone, it's Samantha. Olaf may not know who Samantha is, but now you do. And welcome to Disney Solo Magic, the #1 podcast for solo travel to Disney World. I have another solo story for you this week. I was so excited to share this one and Natasha's from last week. I was so excited to be able to hold on to them and share them in January because, again, thinking kind of broadly, big New Year's resolutions about maybe planning for other trips. And I was really excited to be able to pair those two conversations together. Last week, Natasha talked about her experience at Disneyland Paris, and she spoke really candidly about what it was like being a large Black woman in Disneyland Paris and how, frankly, uncomfortable she was, and how her experience at Disneyland Paris really, really burst the magic for her. And I think, is a really good reminder about staying true to yourself and knowing who you are and how important it is to, as much as possible, go to and choose spaces that really help you enjoy and celebrate your magic. And for her, Disneyland Paris was not it, but Disney World in Florida definitely was. So please go make sure you listen to that episode. This week, though, we have another totally different continent that we're talking about. I'm talking again with Matt Richardson in this week's episode. It was so wonderful to talk with him. Last year, we got a lot of pickup. A lot of people listened to that episode and talked about how inspiring it was to do some remote work while you were at Disney World in Florida. And I noticed that last year, 2024, Matt not only spent his time at Walt Disney World in Florida, but he also went to Hong Kong Disneyland, Tokyo Disney, and Tokyo DisneySea. So I was like, hey, Matt, you want to talk about your Asian travels on the podcast? And he said yes, very enthusiastically. And in fact, he just came back from traveling to London when I spoke to him. So he was a little jet lagged, but it was just wonderful to hear about his travels. And what was so great was that we were able to compare and contrast the 3 different parks: Tokyo Disneyland, Tokyo DisneySea, and Hong Kong Disneyland. And he's just so great and so smart about putting together all these different elements of his trip. And I think you're really, really going to love this episode. The links to all the social media are in the description below, and it's just wonderful to be able to follow him and all of his reviews, etc., etc. You can also follow me on social media, although, in all honesty, solos, I have not been on social media a lot the last week or two. That is not virtue signaling. Actually signaling just literally feeling snowed in by both work and the weather. And I woke up the other day and I just was really jonesing for the Festival of the Arts. And I was like, oh, I think that's it. I think I'm trying to stay away from social media so I don't plan a last minute trip to Orlando for the Festival of the Arts this year because I have a writing deadline that I'm trying to meet. So if you're trying to reach me, I'm a little slow to respond these days. My apologies. You can listen to this on Apple and on YouTube and on Spotify, ... So I've gotten some notes from people that they haven't been able to hear these on Spotify in the last month or so, but from my side of the aisle, I can see all of the episodes just fine. So if you were listening to this on Spotify, hi. Can you please let me know you're listening? can you please just send me a message, maybe an Instagram DM or something, to just be like, hey, yeah, I can hear it just fine. And then I know if it's a big problem or it is an individual problem that I have to figure out another way to solve. So that would be really great. The links to all of that are below. Is there anything else? I don't think so. Let's get into it. Matt, thank you so much for speaking with me today. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And it was so great to talk last time about your remote working experiences at Walt Disney World and what that is like as a solo. But I'm really interested because this past year you went to Hong Kong and Tokyo and did the Disney World trips there. And I'm just really excited to hear about your experience because I believe those were solo trips too. So can you tell me about those trips?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me back. I had been on a mission to visit all 12 Disney parks, and the one that I was missing was Hong Kong Disneyland. And I had done Tokyo Disney on my own and with my husband before, and I had a work travel that took me to Tokyo. So, of course, I spent a few days at Tokyo Disney, and I was excited to go there because I hadn't yet seen the new Fantasy Springs expansion, and there is a lot going on there.
Yes.
And then I also had work travel that took me to Shenzhen, which is a short ferry ride from Hong Kong. And so when I saw that opportunity come up and when that was landing on my work calendar, I was like, "Oh, this is going to
Ooh.
be the year!" And so I was so excited. Since it was work travel, I was solo and hit Hong Kong Disneyland solo, which was a phenomenal trip. I had so much fun, and it's a great resort for different reasons than other resorts I've been to, and we can jump into all that.
I know sometimes from your Instagram feed that sometimes you travel to the African continent for work. So I'm sure you're also like, it'd be great if there was a park there, because then we could do a
Oh
lot of other
yeah.
double trips.
Wouldn't that be great? Oh, I would love that. You put it in like Egypt or something, I don't know, or
Yes.
Kenya.
Yeah. So, can you tell me about like the two individual trips, especially Fantasy Springs, that seems so magical from all of the, social media content that they provide? So tell me about your trips, like what those experiences were like.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of my favorite Disney park is Tokyo DisneySea, and
Yeah.
so I'm always excited to go there. I've been there on my own before, but when I saw that Fantasy Springs was now open, and they also had this, and I think this is going away, but essentially like a premier access package, which included if you booked a hotel and you got like there's all kinds of terms and conditions, and it was a whole package, but it included basically unlimited lightning lane access or whatever the equivalent is to all the rides, access to the land at any moment, anytime you were there. And so I was able to just really focus a lot on everything in Fantasy Springs my entire time I was there.
Wow.
I mean, I did do other stuff as well, like a lot of my Tokyo Disney favorites, but Fantasy Springs as an expansion was probably one of the more impressive park expansions I've ever seen. There are
Cool.
three really good rides. There are multiple restaurants. There's a hotel. I mean, it is impressive, this expansion. It is beautiful, it's interesting, and we're seeing stuff we've never seen before. It's not a duplicate of anywhere else. So I was really excited about Fantasy Springs, and honestly, I was not let down at all.
That's awesome. That's so exciting because I feel like sometimes what we all see on social media, especially the promotion videos and photos and things like that, and then you get there and you're like, "Oh, okay, cool," but also
Yeah, and actually, to contrast that, that was sort of my experience with the new Frozen Land at Hong Kong Disneyland. Again, I was
Oh.
excited. I had never seen it, and the Frozen Land at Hong Kong Disneyland was nice. There's good stuff there, but it didn't really knock my socks off the way Fantasy Springs did. Now, Fantasy Springs has Arendelle, and
Hmm.
the Frozen World of Frozen at Hong Kong Disneyland is Arendelle. But and it's probably a little bit more of an enhanced version of Arendelle at Hong Kong Disneyland. There's a bit more there, but it just wasn't. It didn't have as much that really caught my attention. That really got me excited. Their version of Frozen Ever After is a lot like the Frozen Ever After we have at Epcot. It's better, but it's a
Hmm.
lot like it. And then the only other ride they have is at Hong Kong Disneyland is a mini coaster, a family coaster, which is cute. It's oaken, wandering oaken themed. It's so cute, but it is very, very short. It's a very simple coaster. And then other than that, you have kind of like a theatrical experience, a kind of simple restaurant, and a couple like a little mini quick service and a store. It's a little bit more simple as far as an expansion is concerned. Now, it is beautiful. It is really cool to be in Arendelle, but when you compare that to what the Fantasy Springs expansion was in
Mm.
Tokyo, boy, I mean, it's a big difference.
And how was the frozen land at Hong Kong Disney like? How did it compare to the rest of Hong Kong Disney? Because it was your first time there.
Yeah, Hong Kong Disney was amazing for me. I went at a time in which, I mean, I think already from what I had heard, wait times at Hong Kong Disney are low, very generally low. And when I was there, they were very, very low. Probably the entire time I was there, Space Mountain had a posted 5 minute wait.
Okay.
And yeah, right. And a lot of really great attractions like Mystic Manor, which is not a ride that we have anywhere else. It's a great ride. I wouldn't say it's quite their version of Haunted Mansion, although they don't have a Haunted Mansion. And this one looks from the outside like a Haunted Mansion, but it's a completely different ride. It doesn't have much to do with Haunted Mansion, but it is a lot of fun. It's one of the early trackless dark rides that they have with all new characters and everything. And that one also was a total walk on the entire time I was there, which is like, could you imagine being at, let's say, Magic Kingdom, and the entire weekend you were at Magic Kingdom, Haunted Mansion was a walk on? You would rarely see that.
Hashtag
So
the dream.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So the what Hong Kong offered me was this sort of ease of access, this sort of getting around so easily, trying everything out multiple times without any issues at all. This was unlike, I mean, this was like seeing, this was like having the most VIP ultimate walk-on access to everything when I was at Hong Kong Disneyland, which really took me by surprise.
That's like it's such an interesting experience because I find too when I like think back to my travel experiences, especially when I'm solo, that there's something about like not having the busyness of the crowds all around you to really kind of understand a place. And so going for the first time for you, you must, I mean, it also may have been a little unsettling. Like, is there something else
Yeah.
going on that I should have known? But like,
Yeah.
it must have been nice to be able to like navigate the park kind of at your own speed and not feel so rushed by a whole bunch of crowds.
Absolutely. It did take me a little while to realize what I was in for at Hong Kong Disneyland because I went straight for because from my Fantasy Springs
Yeah.
experience, I thought, okay, there's gonna be a big rush on everything in Arendelle. And so I've got to get over there. I've got to get on the standby line for this, and then I gotta buy Premier Access for that, and then I gotta make sure to get a mobile order in and get my time and I kind of bolted over there. I walked right onto the Oaken ride, and then I got off of that and walked right onto Frozen Ever After, and then I walked off, and I could walk onto Oaken again, and so it was just like it really took me by surprise, and I had to kind of reframe what the trip was going to be like, and so in a good way, in a good way. So I was able, and that's not true at all for Tokyo Disney. Whenever I've been to Tokyo Disney, it's always been high demand for
Mm.
everything. You've got to be strategic with the Premier Access, just like in the US, if figuring out lightning lanes and Premier Access or whatever, Tokyo, you still had to be very strategic about what you wanted to do, and you pick a couple things and you settle for a long standby or you pay for access. The big thing about Hong Kong for me was just like it was unreal to me. Now, it's not always like that, and that's what I had heard from some locals. It's not always like that, but I had lucked out. I'd really lucked out.
You know, what that reminds me of the comparison between Hong Kong and Tokyo is what it reminded me of is Disneyland versus Disney World, right? Like when people that are used to Disney World and they say things like, do you think a week is enough for Disneyland? It's
Right.
like, oh, yes, you also cut that substantially. And then people that are used to Disneyland to be like, oh, I don't understand why I would need to study to go to Disney World, right? And it's such different experiences with crowds
Absolutely.
and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at Tokyo Disney, you have two parks, you have something like six hotels, and just there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
At Hong Kong Disney, it's small. They've got one park, three hotels. it's just a lot smaller as well. So I think just one good day at Hong Kong Disney is great. You're fine. It would be hard to really do Tokyo Disney comprehensively in one day, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what was it like to be at both places solo? What was it like to do Disney solo in these two different environments?
Yeah, so I would say that if you kind of pick up on the sort of slightly, I don't know how to describe it, perhaps isolating aspect of being solo and you're
Mm,
on your own. Now, some people relish that. That aspect of it is going to be a bit more enhanced when you're in a park where not only are you on your own, but you don't speak the local language, and the people around you are from all different countries, from all over the world, rather than mostly being Americans. And so that sort of feeling you get, I think for a lot of people when they're in a US park and they're solo, there's this sort of like camaraderie between you and other park goers where you
right.
you have some fundamental understanding between each other and you know how to strike up a conversation. There's some cultural understanding
Yep.
between you and other people there. Whereas if you're in a foreign park, that certainly can happen. You can meet great people, but the cultures and norms are going to be totally different. Language is definitely going to be a barrier there. So the aspects that are a bit isolating are going to probably feel a bit more enhanced when you're at a park like Tokyo or Hong Kong, or at a resort like Tokyo or Hong Kong. That might be good for a lot of people. And for me, it's fine. I'm used to
Hmm.
that. I travel all over the world solo for work, and I'm acclimated to that sort of situation. But if you travel solo and you do it with a little bit of discomfort, you might kind of want to consider that aspect of it. Is that it's the benefit of traveling with other people in a foreign place is that you've got a kind of team of people to help figure aspects out of things. When not something is not straightforward, you can't figure out how to get from A to B, or you can kind of work as a team. Here you're on your own. So it's like Amazing Race, but you're on your own rather than being a team. And for me, that's fun. I like that. But it does make the sort of experience of being a solo traveler a bit more of an advanced experience, I would say.
I like the way that you phrase that, like a little bit more of an enhanced experience. It's a culture shock of both being in a different country with different language, but then also you're expecting a shared culture at the park itself, and that's not necessarily a given.
Yes, absolutely. The park culture is different in different countries.
Hmm.
You'll see an appreciation for different characters than you're used to. If you go to the Asian parks, there's a lot more people going crazy for Duffy and Friends, and there's a lot more of a. If you go to Tokyo Disney, you'll see people dressed up in a totally different way than you don't expect. It's not as much Disney bounding, but there is a way of dressing there. And I think that's awesome. Like,
Yeah.
isn't that a lot of fun to see the way another culture, another country, another nationality experience their own Disney park? There's something to appreciate about those differences. And I think, yeah, if you go in with an expectation that everything you know about Disney World culture in the US is going to translate, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a shock, for sure. And so, but it is cool. It is cool. I'll be honest, like I don't know much about Duffy and Friends. And for those who don't know, Duffy is Mickey's teddy bear, and there's a whole Duffy universe. And
Okay.
Duffy's got friends, and they're different animals, and they're cute. They are really, really cute. By my most recent trip, I was so psyched because I was gonna meet Shelly Mae the turtle, who's friends with Duffy, who is Mickey's teddy bear. Like I don't know, I got into it and it was fun to learn and understand about something else. And it was fun to get into it, even though like I only had just learned in the last few years about Duffy and Friends. It was like you look around and you looked at the amount of people who were dressed up like them and excited to meet them. It was like, hey, I, I love fandom. I'm in with this on you. I'm going to be excited to meet Duffy too, and excited to meet Shelly Mae and Alumel, or no, so Alumel is the turtle. Shelly Mae, I don't know. I get them all mixed up. I'm still learning all these people, but it is just like it's so much fun to have like your Disney Parks universe get expanded like that. I really like that. That's a lot of fun.
I love that. And one of the things I'm like kind of extrapolating from what you're talking about too is like if you go to these parks solo, no, it's going to be a different culture, but that it's actually easier if you just kind of lean into that culture rather than be like, oh, no, like, what's a Duffy? Right? To be like, okay, like let's if this is what we're doing here, let's what we're doing here. Because like the magic of Disney en masse is this kind of like commitment to storytelling and make believe and magic, and that looks different in different contexts.
And that is exactly what, generally speaking, international travel is about. This is
Yeah.
what to appreciate about international travel is experiencing some different culture and experiencing just something different than what you're used to and appreciating those differences. I know that international travel is not for everybody, and I understand that. But there really is something fun and interesting about seeing something that's totally foreign to you and you can figure it out or not figure it out and just appreciate it that it's different. And
Yeah.
it's just it's fun. It's a lot of fun. No matter what, these are people who are big fans of the brand. These are people who are really excited to be there. They're there to have fun. Yeah, it may not be, you may not be able to find Dole Whip at Hong Kong Disneyland, but there are other things you can find that you won't find in the US parks that are just as good, and you know, it's just fun to explore those things.
So, I know you've also been to Shanghai Disney, although that wasn't this
Mm.
past year. Out of the three kind of Asian locations, do you recommend one for solos who want to try going and exploring these parks, but are a little kind of hesitant because of all these different things?
Yeah, I would say, and I'm a bit torn about this answer, but I'm gonna go and lean into Hong Kong Disneyland being your best bet
Ooh, I love
because
it.
Hong Kong was under British rule for a while, up until the late 90s, and so there's a little bit more English
Hmm.
in Hong Kong, generally, all of Hong Kong. And so there's also just generally more English speakers at Hong Kong Disneyland. So if you're concerned about language barrier, which a lot of my followers do ask about language barrier all
Yep.
the time, it's something that comes up for a lot of people. If you're concerned about language barrier, Hong Kong Disneyland is your best bet. I'd also say because of the fact that generally speaking, the wait times are really low. It's one park, it's easy to do, it's connected on the metro. I would say there's just something that's more accessible for a new international park goer about Hong Kong Disneyland as opposed to the other parks. And the only reason I'm reluctant to recommend Hong Kong Disneyland is because the best park is Tokyo DisneySea. And so if you'd have to make a choice, do you want something that is just a little bit more accessible for, let's say, if you're a beginner international traveler or a beginner solo traveler, I would recommend Hong Kong Disneyland. I think that's a good default answer. If you're a bit more adventurous and you just want to see something that is totally unlike anything you've ever seen in a Disney park, you've got to go see Tokyo DisneySea.
Yeah, one time I saw a documentary about Tokyo Disney Sea, and I was like, I'm sorry, is this real life? Like,
It's unreal.
why have I never heard about this before? What is this like feat of engineering? Like, what am I looking at? I could not believe it.
It is unreal. Even before the Fantasy Springs expansion, this was my favorite park, and now it's absolutely my favorite park. It is massive, it is immersive like you've never experienced before. It is, you know, fantastical and magical. It really Tokyo Disney Sea is a very special place, and so I would highly recommend anyone go there if they can. I love it there. I absolutely love it there.
I love it. I love that. You kind of mentioned this already when you talked about that there was really low wait times at in Hong Kong, but is there anything that and we also kind of talked about the language, but is there anything kind of easier or harder as a solo at these two parks that kind of surprised you that you wanted to flag?
I would say for me, and a lot of people ask me about language barrier,
Yeah.
and I would say for me, I was, even though they're, you know, in obviously at Tokyo Disney, they're most of the entertainment and attractions you're hearing Japanese spoken, and it's mostly Cantonese, but some English at Hong Kong Disneyland. Um, I would say the language barrier didn't really matter to me as much as you might think.
Oh,
You let
great.
these stories, you let these experiences just sort of wash over you. You do not have to understand what every single character is speaking. So, you know, what every character is saying. So you go and watch, there's a great show at Hong Kong Disneyland called Mickey and the Wondrous Book, which is a bit like Mickey and the Wondrous in the map show from Disneyland. The name's escaping me right now from a while back. But and it's really mostly in Cantonese, and Olaf is speaking Cantonese, but still like, and you're seeing him talk to Goofy and Mickey, they're speaking Cantonese, but honestly, like, there's so much more to what a show is conveying beyond dialogue that you
Mm.
can still sit back and enjoy the show without even understanding a single word that's coming out of these characters' mouths. Um, but even so, what was cool about that show was that up on the sides of the stage were these big, massive set pieces that were books, and projected onto the books were translations from it was from Cantonese to Mandarin and from both languages into English as well. And so,
Wow.
you know, no matter what languages you spoke, if you sat in the right vantage point, you could see the translations. But truthfully, I didn't really care to watch the translations because I was just watching the show and enjoying the movement, the characters, the lighting, the set design, the music. So for me, what's easier than I expected was the language aspect of this. And
Oh,
and
cool.
honestly, I've said it before today. This is the thing that people seem to worry about the most in my comments and in my DMs. It is something that you don't need to worry about at all. It's still so much fun, even if you don't understand what everyone's saying.
I love that. I love that so much. The experience of that show reminds me of when I went to go see the opera for the first time, and they put the translations like above the stage, and I was like,
Yeah,
no, I don't need
supertitles.
to
Yeah.
see the like. That's not the point. The point isn't to understand the plot. The point is everything else. So, I'm
Yeah,
really
you let it, you take it in, you let it wash over you. I mean, I'm sure there are people who want to get every bit of dialogue in here, every bit of story they can, but like I needed it a lot less than I thought I did.
That's great. That's really great. What was your highlight? I mean, it seems like Fantasy Springs was your highlight at Disney Sea, but what was your kind of highlight in both those parks? Or like again, like a highlight that was like extra surprising. That you were like, "Oh, look at this," other than the language.
So Tokyo DisneySea at the Fantasy Springs expansion, you're in Arendelle and you see what looks like the entrance to Frozen Ever After. And when you go through the queue, you think you're getting on Frozen Ever After, but what you're really getting is an experience that is, you know, it's still a boat, it still goes forwards and backwards like Frozen Ever After does, but the whole experience is like I don't know, five, six, seven times longer than Frozen Ever After. There's just like you're basically getting the entire story of the first Frozen movie, and the effects are unbelievable. And you're like, how I'm in here thinking, how long have I been in this experience? It's like, yeah, Rise of the Resistance is like super epic, and you're like, how big is this show building? Same thing for Anna and Elsa's Frozen journey. It's just this. Sorry, it's Anna and Elsa's Frozen Adventure, I think is what it's called. The Anna and Elsa attraction at Fantasy Springs is unreal, and it's a kind of a, if I could give honorable mention, the
Yeah.
Peter Pan attraction as well, which is a bit like the Remy's Ratatouille adventure. It's a bit of a trackless, it's a bit 3D, it's a bit of everything.
Cool.
It's a Peter Pan ride that is really plussed up, really, really enhanced, even beyond what you experience with like Remy's. So it is really, really cool. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And did you do the Rapunzel ride too?
Yeah, yep. So that ride is a boat ride. It is beautiful. It is gorgeous. You're going to get some beautiful moments. It is extremely short.
Okay.
Very, very short. So I think there's maybe some like budget cuts there, and they just kind of like, let's just get them in there and get them out pretty fast.
Right.
I gotta
Okay.
say, you should absolutely do it. It is beautiful, but just check your expectations on how long that experience is, especially if you came off of Anna and Elsa's Frozen journey, adventure, whatever it's called.
Okay.
You get
So
a
noted. Do
yeah,
do Rapunzel first.
exactly,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly.
I'm also really intrigued by the like the Little Mermaid land.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I know that's not new, but
yeah, that's beautiful. So this is it's all indoors. It's all feels like it's underground, although I'm sure it's not actually underground, but like the way you enter is you kind of go down a ramp that takes you down, and it's
do you
mostly
mean
I would
under the sea?
under the sea.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Um uh and you and you go down and there's a lot of like attractions for little ones, like little little mini rides and everything. But then there's just this whole area to explore down there. There's like you can see the Prince Eric statue, and there's a shipwreck and everything. It's like you just don't expect there to be so much there, but it is a wonderful experience. It's really cool. And then
That's really awesome. I
yeah,
hope
that's
this
nice.
conversation is inspiring people to plan their own trip for this year or maybe next. Is there anything you would caution against for people planning one or both of these trips solo?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say do some research. I think the thing that a lot of people when they ask me questions about this is like, well, should I book like 6 days there? And it's like, no. You got to set your expectations here. Again, this is like that difference you were talking about between Disney World and Disneyland.
Yeah.
Really understanding what the size of these places are and doing the research about that is super important. You do not need 6 days at either of these resorts. You don't even need 4 days. I would say for a beginner, Tokyo Disney Resort, 2 days, 1 day each park, you're set. Hong Kong Disneyland, one day in the park, you're set. If you want to go deeper, like I did 2 days at Hong Kong Disneyland. I had a great time and it was great. I did things multiple times and I loved it. Also, I wanted to try lots of different
Yeah.
foods and everything. And then so that's what I would just say. Just do a little bit of research about that. And I think the another thing I would just make sure of is that you think about, well, what else do you want to get out of your trip as a whole? Tokyo is a lovely place to visit as a tourist. I've been there 4 times now. It's for my husband and me, it's our favorite place to visit.
Ooh, love that.
And so there's a lot of great stuff going on in Tokyo. There's a lot of great stuff going on in the city of Hong Kong. Although I didn't visit it as much as I hoped to on this trip. I've been there in the past. But they're great cities, so don't forget about all that you want to do there. Don't just think Disney's the only thing going on there because these cities, these countries, they have a lot of great stuff on offer.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's a really important thing to remind people. Like, you can make these trips for Disney, which is amazing, but if you're going to go so far away, then make sure to bring some other things to that trip because you probably will not be going back to Japan necessarily anytime soon unless you're, traveling for work and stuff like that and to be able to make the most of it. I love that piece of advice. All right, well, Matt, this was so great to like think about your 2024. Now that we're in 2025, do you have any kind of Disney goals? Do you have any Disney plans, any resolutions that you're going into this year with?
So now that I have done all 12 parks, I think in 2025 I'm gonna like rest on my laurels a little bit. One thing for sure is that I'm gonna continue uh trying as much as I possibly can, sharing those experiences. I think like what I'm all about is really just sharing my authentic self online and uh, I want to continue to do that. And so I feel like I feel like I've really accomplished something in 2024. So I'm not sure. I've never done a Disney cruise. Maybe
Mm.
2025 is the year I make it happen. I don't know. We'll see. That would be fun. But
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
Disney cruises are on my list too, but there is no price for singles. You just have to
yeah.
go, you have to pay for two people or go with somebody. And the Disney cruises right now, especially with all the promotion in December about the new ships, I was like, oh God, we're getting closer and closer to that.
Yeah. And I'm not above paying for two just for me, but like I we talked about this last time I was on the podcast, and my husband is a Disney adult by marriage. He tolerates Disney, but I think because there's an out. You can
Yes,
kind of
yes.
escape it a bit. And I think there's probably some reluctance on his part. I won't speak for him totally, but there's probably some reluctance on his part to be on a ship that is like Disney entirely.
You know what? I appreciate that. That's was always kind of my fear too, especially if that Disney is all just kids, right? And so
Yeah.
that was always my kind of fear. And a lot of people have been like, no, no, we go with the kids all the time, like without the kids all the time, or we just get rid of the kids for a lot of the time. Yeah, so all right, well, we'll see how that year 2025 evolves. But I want to thank you because when we talked last, we talked about family style, and you said like Liberty Tree Tavern slash Diamond Horseshoe is a family style restaurant you go to because they'll put out a plate. And so, as I've been thinking about my own 2025 goals, I was thinking all the things that I actually haven't done because when you go solo, it's so easy just to like stick with the things you love without pushing the boundaries. But when I was there in December, I tried Diamond Horseshoe because you suggested it and it was great. It was perfect family style even though it wasn't family style, and it was a really good value for money. So I wanted to say thank you for that recommendation.
I'm so glad you got to try that out. It's we made a reservation for next weekend because I
Yay.
love that place. So yeah, that great spot. I'm so glad you went.
Yeah, I did. And you know what? You were right. Coming with that one plate and then being like, yeah, let's do another plate. It felt very not wasteful. Whereas when I went to like the Sebastian's restaurant at
Yeah,
Caribbean, I was like, oh God, it's all just,
yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
thank you
And the
for
food is
that.
much, much better at Diamond Horseshoe and Liberty Tree than it is at
Yeah,
Sebastian's, to be totally
definitely.
honest.
Definitely. Well, one of my 2025 resolutions is I hope we'll get to meet in person, that
Yes.
one day we will both be at Walt Disney World at the same time and we can say hello. So, thank you so much for coming on again. And as always, you were always welcome to come and share your experiences. And please, everyone, make sure you follow Matt because he does some great reels and great content. All of his links and everything are below. But, Matt, do you want to share them verbally as well?
Yeah, so if you go to mattrichardson.com, all my links are there because who knows what the future of social media is going to look like these days. So I'll always be updating that with the latest ways to find me. And so, but it's mostly Instagram and TikTok, and you'll find links at mattrichardson.com.
Great, great. Thank you so much. All right, well, have a wonderful 2025,
You
and
too.
we will talk to you later in the year, I guess.
Can't wait.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Hey Solos, it's Samantha. I hope you like this episode and all the episodes of Disney Solo Magic, the number one and I think only podcast for solo travel to Disney World. Help me make this podcast even bigger. Please make sure you rate, review, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube. You can do all three. That's really great. It's also really, really great to connect with you, and you can connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. Instagram is the best way to get in touch with me. And if you want to support the podcast even more, and keep it ad-free, you can buy me a coffee. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/Disney _ solo _ magic. And for the low price of $3 American, which is about $5 Canadian, and it's hard to even find a coffee at that price these days, you can support me and the podcast and help keep me caffeinated for a week ahead of content creation and editing. Thank you all so much for listening. It is just wonderful to build this community, and I can't wait to create more content for you. Bye.